Hello, very good morning. Welcome along to Ireland M and Virgin Media One.
It is the 28th of November, and here's what's coming up today.
Well, more than 80,000 healthcare workers voted in favour of industrial action. We are going to have the latest on that when we dissect the morning's headlines at 7:15.
Well, indeed, with polls opening tomorrow, we're going to be getting the do's and don'ts of Election Day and how to use our votes effectively. That is at 7:35 this morning.
Plus at 8:15, we're going to be discussing moody managers. So, from the ridiculous demands to the bizarre encounters, think of the office, the awkwardness, the grumpy old managers you can't stand. We want to hear your
My boss
stories.
is the best boss in the world. I love her. Amazing.
Tell us what you
Fantastic.
said off air.
What are you trying to say?
Yes, so send us in your messages. We'll keep them anonymous. 0896 111 111. Maybe give us a laugh this morning.
Let's see what happens. Alan, give us a laugh this morning. Come on, he wants a laugh.
Ha ha ha, that's a lovely dress. Ha ha ha. Now, fresh from his win at last night's Unpuss Book Awards, bird enthusiast Seán Ronayne chats about his life's work capturing the nation's bird song. And with Black Friday kicking off tomorrow, we're going to be giving you all the consumer advice that you need, especially how to avoid those scammers. And Alberto Rossi is rustling up the perfect Thursday night treat in the kitchen a little later on. Now, Deric is in Newbridge this morning. What's happening there, Deric?
You're very giddy back in studio this morning. Good morning anyway, Al. We're here down in Newbridge in County Kildare this morning. It's a bit of a cold, frosty and icy start, but we do have plenty of cloud cover, brilliant showers on the way across the west and into the south, and quite a windy day in store too, and quite mild, so a big change from what we've seen over the last week or so out there this Thursday. Now, Newbridge Silverware in the heart of County Kildare is where we're at this morning. It's a family-led business up and running, celebrating 90 years on the go, would you believe? So we're going to be taking you on that tour of the factory floor, finding out all about the famous faces that have passed through here over the coming years. We'll also be catching up with etiquette expert Noel Cunningham. He is going to be dressing the table for the festive feast ahead. Do you serve from the left or do you serve from the right? We'll find out later on. Which one do you do, guys?
I have never heard of that in my entire life. Is that a thing?
No idea, Derek. Okay, there you have it. I just know the left.
We'll let you know later.
Fork is on the left. There you go.
Is that really a thing? So which side you meant to serve food from?
We're going to find out.
0896 111 111. Get in contact.
There you go. Catch up with you later on, Derek. Well, from toddler tears to costly visits, we are going to be discussing the parenting realities of visiting Santa Claus.
Yeah, we'll chat to you very shortly right here on Ireland Day. Welcome back. It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We're starting with the Irish Times. The headline there: parties sharpen focus in last-ditch appeals as political parties enter the final day on the general election campaign. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have focused on economic issues, while Sinn Féin appeals to voters looking for change.
All I want for Christmas. It goes on to say that there will be no new government by Christmas if the election has an independent surge. Party leaders warned that is the way. That's the front of the Mirror.
The Examiner leads with Harris urges centrist transfers. It says that the Taoiseach has encouraged the public to back centrist parties to form what he called a stable government.
The Irish Independent also goes with election deadlock. The three main parties are deadlocked as the country heads towards the polls, with Fianna Fáil holding the most slender of leads over Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. That's according to the Red C poll for the Business Post that took place online with 1,004 applicants. The margin of error in this poll is being plus or minus 3%.
The Daily Mail says Fianna Fáil has the upper hand as Fine Gael falter amid late Sinn Féin rally. This is according to, as we just mentioned, a Red C poll for the Business Post that took place online with those 1,004 applicants.
The Sun leads with it's a backlash. Big brands are snubbing disgraced brawler Conor McGregor, but his partner is standing by him.
The Star also leads with Circle KO for Conor. It goes on to say that another major retailer and a local Dublin football club are the latest to distance themselves from Conor McGregor in the wake of the civil case won against him by Nikita Hand.
And finally, the Herald goes with a similar story. McGregor parties with Kinahan thug. It says that a video that has gone viral in the wake of Conor McGregor's civil rape case shows him partying with a convicted member of a Kinahan gang murder squad.
Now, here to discuss the other stories making the headlines this morning is News Talk's Andrea Gilligan. Andrea, thank you so much.
Hey,
of course,
Andrea. Good
we're
to
covering
see you.
all about the polls and the news and everything like that, but we are going to return, and it's on the front of the
lot of
Independent there, and there is a woman who drove home in Lebanon to her house to see that it had been destroyed.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to look at some of the footage and the pictures over the past 24 hours. This, of course, since the ceasefire was announced between the US President Joe Biden and the French President Emmanuel Macron in the early hours of Wednesday morning. But as you mentioned, the front of the Indo and so many other outlets, what we're seeing is that so many residents in Lebanon who were displaced after the Israeli forces' attacks over the past number of weeks, now in a position to return home, but really to return home to their houses that are located very much in the southern end of the country, down south. So, like, it's just incredible. I mean, the footage of people, delighted, thrilled at the prospect of getting back to their house. Unusually not knowing what condition or what state that property is going to be in. I was reading some of the local reporters from Al Jazeera over the past 24 hours that are there, that are reporting on the ceasefire. And some of them were talking about the fact that local residents were out, they were waving signs of victory at the idea of getting back home. But look, it remains to be seen. Even some of the commentators over the past 24 hours talking about this, very much saying that, if there is any breach, there will be enforcement. And I suppose it's the kind of thing that we've seen this story change and shift in so many guises over the past number of weeks.
I mean, it's
But
great,
look, it's
great to see a ceasefire.
Absolutely.
Can I ask, so, do we know, because Lebanon, I know, are broke, who tries to build back? Because we're seeing some of the levels of devastation here, some of the pictures, people going back to their homes that are completely, not there anymore.
And that's the cost of this is it's untold. As you mentioned,
is it up to the country to build it back? Is it up to Hezbollah?
Who's going to take
I wonder where
responsibility?
they go, where that comes from, where that money comes from, because I know the country itself is broke,
Yeah.
Completely. And aside from the fact that you have the level, it's the scale of the devastation that's there in terms of businesses.
Yeah.
When you look at when you look at how all of, in Ireland and any other country, European country, how money is made in terms of rates, in terms of every grant aid that's applied or divvied out to people. I mean, how that's going to happen in a country like this is just
No idea.
And
it's unbelievable,
all
the
the
level of
while,
devastation.
we just see the more and more bombings happening in Gaza, so nothing has been sorted in relation to that. But good news, and it was nice to see people actually celebrating. And
Yeah.
people in Gaza were
And happy to
celebrating,
get
people in
back.
Lebanon able to go home. But we'll see more throughout the day, no doubt, as there always is in that place. Now we're going to move on to news closer to home. Patients facing strike threat. So this is healthcare workers.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a quiet Christmas, but I don't think the same can be said for the new year when we look at the results of this force of ballot that's out today. So this is nurses, it's social care workers, it's your physios, your speech and language therapists, your occupational therapists. And what's happening is that hospital patients could face the potential threat of strike action in the new year because thousands of staff have now voted overwhelmingly for industrial action. So on the force of ballot, they were asked whether or not they would vote for industrial action up to and including strike action. And it's all over the impact of the suppressing of posts and the failure to replace vacant posts
so
that
you're
are in
talking,
the health service.
You're talking about, the patients will suffer. They're doing this because of the staffing crisis. They're like, we are operating at a level where we don't have enough staff to be looking after the amount of patients that we have properly.
We've vacant posts that just haven't been filled. And
Totally fair enough, but the timing of this, I know they're doing it at the
That's the
optimum
point.
time. Exactly, but if you're...
Maximum impact.
Listen,
When is there ever a good time for a strike
Well,
in
there's a
healthcare?
trolley crisis all the way through the year.
Yeah.
But particularly going into this Christmas, January period, it's going to be particularly bad. So whenever there's strikes going on, I kind of think, yes, I understand they're trying to get their message across, but at the same time, a lot of people are going to suffer because of this.
Well, look, we know from the INMO figures on the number of hospital trolleys. For instance, yesterday there was 535 patients waiting on a bed on a trolley. Of those, 71 patients were waiting for over 24 hours. That included 11 people over the age of 75. We know from years gone by that the number of people who maybe have an illness or are sick in some way and require emergency treatment, like a lot of people unfortunately tend to hold off over the Christmas period because it's Christmas and they don't want to be in hospital for Christmas.
And because they know the chaos they're going to be seeing when they go in there.
And those figures will spike in January. Of that, there is no question. It has been the case in years gone by. I suppose what we're hearing about today from this particular strike action is that they're talking about industrial action up to and including strike action. So they're likely to start with a work to rule, which I suppose is an indication to HSE, to management, that they are in a position and want to negotiate and that it could go up to strike action.
Okay.
So there are different levels of this. The other element, I suppose, to note in all of this is that the trade union are likely to give their decision on this within the next fortnight, but then they have to give hospital management, they have to give the HSE 3 weeks notice of what they're doing.
Before they do this.
There's effectively a kind of a 5-week period or buffer period here before anything is officially announced.
Well, we know that healthcare workers don't want to be out. They don't want to be picketing a line. They want to be in taking care of their patients. We'd like to know what you make of this, because this is what they were balloted last night and they're looking like strike action might happen, and this is over. They're saying staffing levels, because it is dangerous at the moment. 0896 111 111. We would love to hear from you if you're involved in the HSE, if you've been in hospital. I know we ask you this all the time. I don't know if anything's ever gotten any better every time we do this. Just to let you know, the HSE response, the HSE engages with all trade unions to resolve issues, and they will continue to do so. It awaits the outcome of ongoing balance, and should there be a mandate for industrial action, we will consider the matter in the context of the public service agreement, is what the HSE have told us in relation to that. So we'd love to hear from you on that.
What is the situation like in there? How frightened are you that if you were sick or you have a loved one, how scared are you about taking them into the hospital, and particularly if there's going to be even more of a shortage of workers in there?
Just very quickly, last night was the An Post Irish Book Awards. There is the Ireland AM popular fiction book.
We're waiting for you to bring out a book. You're definitely going to win that.
Yeah. So we were all there last night, the glitz and the glamour, and chatting to all the authors, and it was absolutely amazing. And our category was won by none other.
Who's our...
the Ireland AM
the
popular
Ireland
fiction.
Of course.
Book of the Year category.
The biggest award of the night.
We have an award category there, so it was huge. So went out on stage and to Miriam and all this kind of stuff. And the winner was the wonderful Graham Norton for his brand new book, Frankie. There we are with Graham when he was in the studio.
There he is, our old mate.
Our old mate. But he wasn't there. He was busy. You know, because, you know, he's Graham Norton. And he has gone to these the An Post Book Awards so many times. But you know who gave him his award? We'll see it on the telly when it's
Warren
on.
O'Connell.
No, I announced that he was the winner.
Right. Okay.
Cher.
Wow.
Cher handed him his award. So
for Ireland AM. That is what we do.
For Ireland AM. So has Cher technically been on Ireland AM?
We roped in Cher to hand over the award to Graham Norton. Well done to Graham. How cool is that?
It is very cool. And congratulations to everybody in the category. And we've got a winner of one of the categories coming up in just a little while, Seán Ronayne.
When Alan Hughes thought that Cher was coming in to do that.
Oh my God, stop.
Jumped out of his seat.
Exactly.
Listen, let's quickly talk about, we're talking about the hospitals, very busy at the minute. Another man who is exceptionally busy is Santa Claus. Yeah. He has a number of helpers out around different areas who are giving out toys and doing whatever bits and pieces and shopping centres, whatever else.
Yeah, his Santa stand-ins, they help him.
The stand-ins.
Yeah.
But I believe there's a shortage of Santa stand-ins in France.
Yeah, and I suppose that the message is, you know, it's... Like, what Santa does is an incredible job.
It's so busy, yeah.
Yeah, and like, nobody can do it. That's why, you know, he is the main man to do it. But as you said, from time to time, he does have to bring in an odd helper here and there to do some of those kind of Santa visits that we see around the world.
But it looks like extra hard work with the likes of rude children and long hours.
Yeah, and I know parents are always telling their kids about this, like, you can't be rude, bed early, do the jobs at home, all of these kind of things, because the Santa helpers don't want to do the stand-ins if the kids aren't doing that. So I suppose it's just a really important message for children at home about this. And like, it's a long job, you know, the Santa stand-ins, what they're doing, but it's long hours.
So they're saying in France that people don't particularly want to work with children anymore because they're like crying in their face and not wanting to go near them. What were your kids like when they went
balloting.
They're banned.
Your kids?
What were your kids like when they went
My
to the
kids,
Santa?
I have, for the first 3 years, every time we went to see the stand-in Santa, we have a lovely picture of them crying their eyes out, wouldn't go
Yeah.
near him.
Is that it? Roaring.
Roaring their
Other
eyes
thing,
out.
just to flag on this, and I know from talking to listeners about this in the programme, you know, sometimes as well, the costs of the Santa experience, not just Santa experience, Santa visits, but the winter experiences. And I know from chatting to people across the country, like, you know, they can be an expensive day out as well. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers will be well aware of that.
How much are you paying to go see Santa?
Oh, you can be paying 60, 70, 80 euro sometimes for the whole experience.
Yeah.
And then you get a picture of your kid crying their eyes out. Let us know.
I loved going to see
How
my
much
Santa
do you
stand-in.
pay to go and see the stand-in Santa or about the shortage Santa? Have you any good pictures of the kids crying?
You'd make a great
0896
Santa.
111
Give us your Santa stand-in, ho, ho, ho.
No, I will not. Andrea Gilligan from News Talk, thank you so much.
guys.
Ho, ho, ho.
Hey,
After the
did
break,
it.
we're going to give you all the info you need to know when you're heading to the polls tomorrow.
See you very shortly. Ho, ho, ho.
Now, voting for the 2024 general election will be held tomorrow from 7 until 10 p.m.
We were just getting excited about Santa and Christmas, and this fella, I cannot explain to you how excited he is. Hello, Seán Defoe. You
An election nerd.
Just before we start, you just went, it's so exciting, it's so exciting.
Yeah,
What-
forget Christmas. This is
This
my
is what
Christmas.
it's all
Yeah.
about. But
Good to see you, Seán.
we're going to do right now the ins and outs of actual voting day, right? What people know. So, what are the basics people need to know before they arrive to the polling station?
So less than 24 hours to go. Polls open at 7 tomorrow, 7 a.m. They're going to be open until 10 o'clock in the evenings. You have a good long window to get all your voting done. Most people will have gotten their voting card by now in the post. If you don't worry about it too much. You'll be able to find your details online, so you can go to check the register today. Probably should have done it a couple of weeks ago just to make sure you
Is
were
there a
registered.
website?
There is. You can go checktheregister.ie.
Oh, it is called Check the
It is
Register.
called checktheregister.ie.
Good
yeah.
to know.
Very, very handy. So you can go and literally check
they
where
did
you're
make it
voting.
keep it simple,
They
stupid
keep it
with
very
that
simple.
one.
Just check the
Yeah.
register
For
and
people like me.
voter.ie. So yeah, nice and simple. Check the register.ie just to make sure you know where your polling station and all of
Right.
that is. It'll be on your polling card if you got that out. You go along. You need to bring your ID with you because that you can be turned away without ID. You can't be turned away without a polling card. And then there's just the process of actually voting.
So what do you do? Fill in the ballot paper? Can you spoil your vote?
You can, if you wanted to. You can
don't.
spoil your vote. Yeah, please don't. But people do all the time. Like they write, make it a political message or whatever. They scroll across it. So the advice is don't write anything on the ballot paper except your 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So what you will see is you'll see a big long list of everyone in your candidate that will vary from, I think there's 10 candidates is the smallest in Wicklow, Wexford. You see a sample ballot paper there.
yeah.
I think 20-something in Louth is the longest this time around off the top of my head. So you will see lots of candidates there.
Seriously, they're doing an MEP basic
Yeah,
election.
the European one.
Well, I know
that
that.
came off the edge of the table
stop.
as you were trying to fill it out. So some of them are going to be very long, and you fill them out. 1 for your first preference, so the person you most want to get elected. 2 for the person you second, and 3 all the way down.
You
Then-
can go all the way down, or you can choose not to.
Exactly. This is where a bit of tactics comes
Okay.
into it. So a lot of it, I was taught when we were going to fill it all out.
Yes.
That that's the democratic thing to do, and you go 1 to 20, whatever, all the way down. I don't anymore. That's what I used to. And some people do. With the European ballots, the amount of them that they filled out 1 to 27 in Midlands, Northwest last time
Wow.
around. Like, people really
Deciding
did.
who's going to get like 25 and 26. I mean, really.
It's like deciding your
Do you know what I mean?
Bebo friends back in the day.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
well,
Isn't that what we
exactly.
were
Had your
talking
top
about the other
friends,
day?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do 1, 2, 3. Now,
Okay.
in order to avoid spoiling your vote, right, because some people put X's.
Yeah.
And if you're only voting for one candidate, that can be accepted if
Yeah.
you just one. But if you have 3 candidates all with an X, you're not showing a clear preference. So when they decide on spoiled ballots, they're looking for a clear preference delineated. So you will see 1, 2, 3, that's very clear. 1 X and nothing else, that's very clear. Or the best one I ever saw, and I can't use the actual words because this is morning television, but someone wrote in I think it was the 2011 presidential election, and they wrote, not a nice man, not a nice man, not a nice man. A bit less of not a nice man for Michael D. And it was accepted as a vote because it was a clear preference.
And
Okay, but
might
don't
it-
be giving ideas to people, right?
Don't be doing that because you have a chance of it
1,
not
2,
getting
3.
It was a clear
It's
preference.
a clear preference because they wrote not such a nice man against all the rest of them.
Is gas.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
Tell us how the transfers work.
So
when you write your number one, the first time everything is counted, when they go through it all on Saturday morning and get there, that is going to your number one preference. Then they rank them obviously in order, the people who are actually going to have a chance of getting elected and the people who aren't. When someone goes out then, so let's say, I voted for Tommy Bowe, as you would, but not many other people did. And you get knocked out, and I voted 2 from Wirren, then it goes over, transfers over to her and bumps her up, and that's sort of the way it goes. And then down through the line.
This is, we operate under PR, the proportional representation system, so transfers of votes are important. You would hear people talking about it all the time.
They are going to be so important in this election because everything is so tight. So literally you might think, oh, why would I fill all the way down? It could well be that your 5th or 6th or 7th ballot is going to decide who gets elected. And you can kind of vote tactically as well. Like if there's someone on the ballot paper that you're like, oh, I really like them or I know them, but I know they've no chance of getting elected, you can still give them your number 1 and give your number 2 to who you think you'll actually get elected, knowing it will go that way. That has backfired on people in the past when people who have come out of the blue to take a seat, but it doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
Very good.
And that's why you see on some of the posters, and it's not as prominent as it used to be, the number 2 preference, but it is there with an awful lot of them. Okay, we'll always hear now over the next few days, coming from the RDS, the quota. The quota has not been reached. What is the quota and how is it calculated?
So the quota, the first thing they do when all of the things come in, they take all the ballot boxes and get all the votes and they count up how many of them are there and make sure that that tallies with the figures that they have gotten from the day before of people who actually voted. And that then they'll sort through the spoiled votes. When you take all that away, you get a thing called the valid poll, which is basically just the total number of votes that they can actually count. And then a percentage of that is going to be the quota. The quota depends on how many seats are in the constituency. So it is the number of seats plus 1. So if you are in a 3-seat constituency, the quota will be 25% because they add 1 and then divide by 4 to make it kind of complicated. And it gets lower and lower. So it's 25% in a 3-seater.
You just have to vote. You don't have to do any of this math.
1, 2, 3. I'm struggling with Seán here. Right? How many?
Quota is basically, in layman's terms, quota is how much you needed to get elected.
Okay, so what is needed to form a government then?
So in the next Dáil, it's going to be 174 seats. It's going to be 14 extra seats in this Dáil, 14 new TDs that weren't there before. And so the majority is going to be 87 because you take out the Count Corley, he doesn't really have a vote in the Dáil. So 87 is the magic number that these parties need to get to in some combination. So it's almost like
And how
Tetris.
many votes are available?
However many votes across the country.
87 of how many?
174.
174.
So 174 Dáil seats up for grabs. So 87 would be your absolute bare majority. So, if you have 2 parties that get 40 seats out of the big ones, they'll still need someone else who has maybe 10 seats to come together. So that's where it gets difficult.
Because we don't live in a country that has a one-party government anymore, and we haven't for a very long time. This is why it can take an awful long time. This is where the old Josh and going, come here, let's do a bit of negotiation.
Coalitionology, as I've started
so
calling
that's it.
So that's it. That's the horse trading, And so look, we know in this election there's an outgoing government that are trying to get back in. Will they have the votes to be thereabouts? They still have to find the supports to go and get it. So you have to come in, and this is where all of the promises that have been made over the last 3 weeks, they all go into a blender and spit out a programme for government, and some of them will make it and some of them won't. There's talk of a government before Christmas from some of the party leaders. The Dáil is due to meet on the 18th. It legally has to meet on the 18th.
Okay.
That's a bit ambitious, I think.
Okay, look how happy he is. You are so happy. I love this for you.
I love Account Weekend. I won't sleep for 2 days, but it's going to be great.
And then the toy show the next week is going to be amazing. Seán Defoe from News Talk, thank you so much. And you are going to be covering it all weekend on News Talk.
Well done,
all
Seán.
throughout the weekend,
well done. Thanks so much.
Sick of me.
And we'll be doing it here as well, by the way, just to let you know. Competing. What's coming up next, Alan?
Well, Muriel, as well as being voting day tomorrow, it's also Black Friday. So we're learning how to bag a bargain and dodge those fraudsters after this short break. Thanks for staying with us now. We love the feeling of bagging a bargain, don't we? Oh, yeah, I love it. But how easily can it be achieved when scams galore are there to catch you out.
Lord, to make sure we get the best deal, but avoid the scammers. Grania Griffin from the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission joins us now. Grania, you're always great for coming into us before Black Friday because obviously there's so much going on. But new research recently revealed something interesting as regards Black Friday shoppers and their spending patterns. What's going on?
Yeah, so what we're seeing this year is there is a big shift now from last year. Last year, almost half of the consumers out there were saying they're going to hit the sales. This year, we're seeing that drop off, a big drop, particularly in men. It's down to 36% overall. But there's still, that's a lot of people. Like, that's 1 in 3 who are planning on going out this weekend now. Well, it's hard to put a finger on it exactly, but what we do see is that a lot of consumers are saying they just don't trust the sales. Yeah. They don't think they're getting a bargain. They don't really trust it. They don't believe in the discounts. Yeah. And they just honestly probably have quite a healthy level of cynicism about the whole thing.
Because I'm a bit like that. I think, oh, they've hiked it up during the summer just to bring it down, or like in August or something was hiked up just to bring it down now.
Well, that's definitely something we used to hear all about. And we lobbied for a long time for the law to be tightened up. And it was. So at the end of 2022, new rules came in and there are actually now strict criteria there for business. You can't put the price up like 1 week and then just stick a line through it the following week.
It down.
Not allowed.
But is that the thing with, you know, when you see the RRP, the recommended retail price, and then the line is through that and then it's got a different price?
Completely illegal. RRP is one of the most misleading things, depending on how it's put about, that a business can do.
It's illegal.
If you do that thing with a line through it and kind of put it forward as a previous price, if it wasn't actually the previous price. So like RRP is a suggested selling price from a manufacturer. They might say, based on how much it costs us to make this, this is what you might sell it for.
Might be able to sell it for.
Doesn't mean anyone has it for sale at that price. Doesn't mean that that business had it for sale at that price. So really, if you're looking at RRP, you can take it under advisement, but it's not a prior selling price. And we will be saying there's other bits of information that are much more relevant.
But despite that survey, there's going to be an awful lot of spending power tomorrow. Like, we're talking about probably 100 million or something like that being spent.
The money is up. So while the number of shoppers is down, the amount that people are planning on spending is up. Like, I mean, on average, people are planning on spending over 430 euros. In some places, people will be going well beyond that. There's a lot of money going to be spent. And what we're also seeing, actually, is usually that money used to go on electronics, technology, phones, laptops. Now, there's still a lot of people planning on buying there. But clothes, footwear, jewellery, those kind of areas are really coming into the fore. So you'll see a lot more money going on that tomorrow.
Yeah, because like years ago, it was online and lots of people would buy it online. But you see all the shops now are getting involved in it. Like every big retailer now has their Black Friday sale.
Absolutely. And look, most people are still planning on shopping online. The vast majority of people are planning on shopping online. But a lot of people are also going into the shops. Yeah. They're saying they're going to do both. So like, you know, 2/3 of people are also going into the high streets, particularly young people actually. They're going into the high streets armed with their cash, and it is actually cash with young people. They're going in and they're planning on doing both.
That has been so interesting. We were talking about that research that younger people have stopped using the cards. They're kind of going back to cash. So there's a lot going on, and of course, Green Friday is a thing as well, where you're supporting Irish businesses for all this kind of thing. But when it comes to discounts, how can you know if a discount is genuine? Like, should you have been doing your research for the last few months and tracking it? Or, you know, what?
Well, look, you'll have a lot of people who are going out and they're looking for something in particular. You know, whether it is kitchen appliances, a television, a hair straightener, and they have been tracking it. But really, that shopping around and keeping a close eye on it is the best way to do it. At this stage, what you want to be doing is paying particular attention to the price and not the discount. It's the actual price that matters, how much. Seeing what's on offer in other retailers, shopping around, and then if you're online, paying really particular attention to make sure that you're not going to get scammed, that you know exactly who you're shopping from.
Well, how do we know that?
Yeah, what do we do?
Well, it is a bit of detective work. I mean, first of all, if you followed a link through from social media, never make a purchase. You know, close the window, go back, find the website organically, check the reviews and move through. And you see that because you see these huge discounts advertised on really well-known brands. It could be Birkenstocks, Doc Martens, any very well-known brand. If it looks too good to be true, it usually is. Right. But then after that, you want to know, are you buying from somewhere that's going to deal with you if you've got any issues, if you want to do returns? Can you find the return address? Is it based in Europe? Is there a contact number? And ultimately, even if it is a legitimate business, if you can't find that information really, really quickly, it's a red flag as to how well that business is going to look after you anyway.
Do we know how much people were scammed last year in Ireland? Is there a figure?
There isn't a total figure, but also that's because it does depend. Some people will just not disclose it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know, and you see so many different types of scams. We see investment scams, romance scams, fake shopping scams. What we do know is that it is ubiquitous. Every household has some experience of a scam.
What should you do? Like if you find a scam, like is there anything you can do? You got to report it.
Well, so if you do see a business that you see is not respecting the law, that you feel like they're clearly like they're saying no sales or no returns on sale items, this kind of thing, you can report it into the CCPC. For an actual scam, the first thing you do is you try and you protect your money. You get in touch with your bank or your financial service provider or whoever owns, has the card whose details you've given over, and you get it cancelled. That is the first thing. Get your accounts protected. Then you contact the guards. But if it is anything to do with a business or anything like that, you can also report it into us.
So, sorry, you just said there about returns. If someone says that you can't, what's going on here?
So with sales, you do sometimes see this thing of no returns on sales items because it's on sale.
Is that legal?
So the way it depends is if you buy something online, unless it's like personalised, you always get 2 weeks to consider your item and decide, do I want to keep it, before you have to decide whether or not to send it back. You have a right to a change of mind return when you buy online. Now, if you buy in-store, it is different. If
Why
you
is
buy
that?
in-store, because
you would have tried it on,
you've had the chance
maybe.
to try it on, to have a
okay.
look. They don't have to offer in-store change.
In refund, they can offer an exchange.
They can offer whatever they want. It's store policy. But the other thing is, though, across the board, whether you buy it online or in-store, if something is faulty or if something is not as described, if you ordered a black jumper, you got a navy one, if it's faulty or not as described, you always have the right to go back. That is your statutory consumer rights. And people who want to know more about them, just check ccpc.ie, or you can ring our helpline and we'll go through with you what your rights are.
That's great. And say you bought it and it's all legit and you're happy and you get your delivery, but you're not there, and this is happening.
We take a picture here.
This happens with Miriam. This is happening to me all the time. They're just leaving it behind plant pots and stuff. Look, this is Miriam.
Sorry, please don't look at the state of my door, right? I'm a renter, it's bad. So I live on a road, so there's no driveway or anything. And that was
We hear about this all the time.
But what is left on the doorstep? Allowed to do that?
Can I just say, it restores my faith in humanity. People just left it. It was like there for 3 hours until my neighbour went up and got it. So
the retailer that you buy the item from is responsible for that item until it is delivered into your physical possession. And that means it's either delivered to you, or if you decide to nominate a neighbour, or if you decide to leave written instructions, put it in the green bin until they do that, which means that that's not been delivered. It's the retailer's responsibility. And if that goes missing or is damaged, you can follow up. Your consumer rights protect you, and they have to put that right.
Would the retailer not say, well, I gave it to the courier, it's the courier's fault?
Not your problem.
Not your problem.
Not your problem.
If you've got any pictures for how your stuff has been delivered madly, we would love to see it. 0896 111 111, because I'm sure you've got them in bins, you've got them behind bushes, all that kind of stuff. It would be lovely to see you. Gráinne Griffin, CCP Director of Communications, CCPC Director of Communications, that you can go to ccpc.ie for all of these things. Thank you so much. Busy time. Thanks for coming in to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Lots more to come on Ireland AM.
See you in a few minutes.
Hi, welcome back to Ireland AM. Here's what's coming up today.
Yes, first up, we're going to be talking about Jekyll and Hyde bosses.
What are you saying about our boss?
Are they? I wonder why we're doing this segment. About erratic behaviour in the workplace. Have you got a boss who is all bright and shiny and happy 1 minute and then loses the plot the next? 0896 111 111. Send us in your messages about your erratic
You can be
bosses.
anonymous. You can be
We're
anonymous.
We're going to be discussing
on that
it
one.
as well at 8:15.
We're also going to be joined by a man on a mission. He wants to record the sound of every bird species in Ireland. Birdsong maestro and author, and just all around, it just makes you feel good about yourself. Seán Ronayne is going to be here at 9:20. He's a lovely person.
Alan is in the kitchen. What have we got out this morning, Alan?
Certainly are. We're here with Alberto Rossi. Alberto, what are we making this morning?
Buongiorno, Alan.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno.
We are making a beautiful winter pasta. So we're going to do rigatoni with pumpkin and sausage.
Is this the sausage?
That is the sausage, yes. Yes, it is.
That's an awful looking thing. Come here. So, rigatoni.
Rigatoni, pumpkin, sausage. Very simple, a nice little bit of Parmesan cheese
All
at the
in
end.
the one pan.
All in one pan, so you get to mix all the flavors.
Love it.
Easy peasy.
Looking forward to that.
Very
now,
good.
Deric is down in Newbridge this morning. What's happening there, Deric?
Rigatoni sounds absolutely delicioso. Back in the kitchen. Anyway, welcome down here to Newbridge. So we're behind the scenes here. We're actually on the factory floor, and it takes a lot of work to go from this to this. Isn't that right, Ronayne Mackey?
Yes, it is, Deric. Yep. So we're going to take behind the scenes this morning and show you about 7 different processes that we use. Everything from blanking out to shanking to polishing to linishing, soldering before we go on for silver plating.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps involved, 7 I believe, and in fact there's a lot of famous faces have come through here over the years.
Yeah, a lot of people would have visited Newbridge Silver, the likes of Maureen O'Hara or Olivia Newton-John. Even Bill and Hillary Clinton would have dined using Newbridge silverware. Even the Queen of England, during her historic state visit to Dublin Castle, she would have dined using Newbridge silverware.
All right, well, if it's good enough for the Queen, it's good enough for Tommy. I'm wearing back to you guys in studio. More coming your way.
Thank you so much.
Deric.
Looking forward to that. We'll catch up with him again in just a little while. Best of luck with that one. Now it's time to take a look at this morning's papers. We're starting with the Irish Times. The headline there, parties sharpen focus in last-ditch appeals as political parties enter the final day on the general election campaign. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have focused on economic issues, while Sinn Féin appeals to voters looking for change.
All I want for Christmas. It goes on to say that there will be no new government by Christmas if the election has an independent surge. Party leaders warned. That's the front page of the Mirror.
The Examiner leads with Harris urges centrist transfers. It says that the Taoiseach has encouraged the public to back centrist parties to form what he called a, quote, stable government.
The Irish Independent also goes with election deadlock. The 3 main parties are deadlocked as the country heads towards the polls, with Fianna Fáil holding the most slender of leads over Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. That's according to the Red Sea poll from the Business Post that took place online, with 1,004 applicants. The margin of error in this poll being plus or minus 3%.
The Daily Mail also leads with that story. The headline, Fianna Fáil has the upper hand as Fine Gael falter amid late Sinn Féin rally.
The Sun leads with, it's a backlash. Big brands are snubbing disgraced brawler Conor McGregor, but his partner is standing by him.
The Star also leads with Circle KO for Conor, who continues to say that another major retailer and a local Dublin football club are the latest to distance themselves from Conor McGregor in the wake of the civil action won against him by Nikita Hand.
The Herald goes with a similar story. McGregor parties with Kinahan thug. It says that a video has gone viral in the wake of the UFC fighter Conor McGregor's civil case, which shows him partying with a convicted member of a Kinahan gang murder squad.
Now, we were talking earlier on about loads of things, but there is potential industrial action by healthcare staff happening in hospitals. Forza, their unions, their members were balloted, and it looks like it could happen. And the HSE has responded. They said the HSE engages with all trade unions to resolve issues and will continue to do so, utilising the industrial relations mechanisms of the state should it be required. The spokesperson went on to say that they await the outcome of the ongoing ballots, but we've been receiving messages on
Certainly
this.
have, and lots of messages coming in from you. And here's one. As a shop steward in an acute hospital, the industrial action is due to a refusal to engage with the unions.
Again, the HSE in their statement say that they have engaged with the unions.
I know, frightening going into such a busy period as well in the hospitals. I am in a hospital as an allied health professional for 20 years. And I've never seen our department so short-staffed, it's on its knees.
I was just on the hospital situation. I had 2 babies within 18 months. Fair play to you, that is unbelievable. The first time I was in the hospital, there was a good level of staffing. The second time I went into the same hospital, it was just 18 months later, there were quite literally no midwives. My induction had to be postponed because there were no staff.
Wow.
Wow.
It's not good, is it?
And they're saying about this ballot that it is due to staffing levels. That's why they've pushed it. But it won't be happening over Christmas, by the way. The minimum it can be is in 5 weeks.
Well, I think start of the new year or whatever else. We're also talking about Santa experiences and if you take
the cost of them.
Well, exactly. So if you take, obviously Santa is extremely busy at the minute, getting all the presents ready for Christmas Day. It's not long to go, but obviously his stand-ins are all over the country helping out and kind of keeping everybody festive. But it is so expensive, Al.
Mag
to
says
have your
here, we
family.
took our son to see Santa, who cried so much that Santa had to leave his grotto. I sat on his chair and he had to sneak in behind us for the picture. So Santa got up, She sat down, Mag sat down, put the child on her lap. Santa's then behind her
And then
like
Santa
this,
comes in,
and goes,
like looming.
Now, to be
our
fair,
son was bawling, we looked stressed, and Santa looked terrified, and the whole thing cost us 80 quid.
money well spent.
Well
to
done,
be
Mag.
fair to the poor Santa, because the whole story was that in France they're finding a shortage
of them,
of
yeah.
stand-in Santas. Because to be fair to you, Mags, like to make Santa have to stand up and leave the room.
Leave your house.
So that you can
So
get
I'll
the
sit down,
photo.
get the child on my lap, then Santa sneaks in, goes behind her, goes, whoa,
Yeah,
ho, ho, ho.
I can see how these Santas are struggling.
You're giving us some real panto vibes there. You're in the thick of it, aren't you?
Keep those texts coming into us. You can WhatsApp us on 089 611 111. We were also talking about
How much does it cost you?
Oh, yeah, how much did it cost you? And if you have any of those pictures of your kids screaming, crying with Santa, we were also discussing about parcels and where they're being delivered. Myrne had one just literally hanging on her door. And are you getting parcels just left at your door? We'd like to know about that.
We've
as
got
well.
messages coming in on that in just a little while. But up next.
Yes, coming up next, we're going to be discussing the impact of your boss's moods.
Yeah, we're learning how to manage our managers. That's coming up on Ireland AM.
You're very welcome back. Now, research suggests that Jekyll and Hyde managers are managers who are always moody. Sound familiar? Can have a detrimental effect on employees.
Do you know if he's saying I'm his manager or if he's saying it about our manager?
I'm just sound familiar for people at home.
Yeah, not for us because we work in a utopia. That's what it is. Here to discuss this with us in more detail is clinical psychologist Dr. Tara Logan Buckley. Hello, Tara. It's lovely to have you here. So, Jekyll and Hyde manager, we're thinking obviously one person with two different personalities. Is that it?
Absolutely. It's someone who basically is unpredictable in two extreme ways. So if we think about Dr. Jekyll, really kind, caring, supportive, we think of Mr. Hyde, we're looking at someone who is harsh, who's critical, and even volatile as well. So that's where the term comes from. It's someone where there's two different extreme personality and mood swings, and you don't know what you're walking into in the office each day because of the inconsistency.
Is this common?
Very common.
Really?
Yes, it can be, yeah.
Do you get a lot of people coming to you about issues with their managers?
Absolutely, all of the time. If we think about the amount of time we spend in work, this is probably going to come to a shock to some people, but on the average lifespan, we spend about 96,000 hours in work, which equates to between 9 to 11 years for the average person.
Okay.
So if we think about if we're in an environment where it's toxic or there's no psychological safety and we're in there 5 days a week for 8 hours, imagine what that's going to do to your physical health, what it's going to do to your mental health and the impact that's going to have outside of you on the workplace.
We saw research recently where it was saying that Gen Z people were just going, I'm not going to be a manager, the money isn't worth it, I don't want that responsibility. So is that not something that we have to take into account, that our managers are dealing with a whole other level of stuff that we just don't know about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think as well, the most difficult thing about being a manager is actually not the job itself. It's actually the managing of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you kind of think about it, you're dealing with HR issues. They might be personal stuff going on for other people. And if we think about the skill set that we need to be a good manager, one of the highest things we need is self-awareness. We need really good emotional regulation skills. Now, think about it. You could be a really good manager for a certain period, but let's say you are getting more demands from higher leadership. There's more KPIs. Let's say you're struggling with something in your personal life at home and you're starting to get stressed and burnout. So you can have someone who's actually was a really good and competent manager move into the Jekyll and Hyde managership as well because of external factors or also factors that are happening within their own workplace. Yeah. We might see it a lot with, you might have someone where a new CEO comes in or they might have someone that they have to report to and that changes the entire dynamic. And then that person is facing all of these things and it's almost like that knock-on effect down as well.
So you do kind of feel sorry for managers in a way because the load, as you mentioned, is so much more different than what you would imagine in a work environment, say, 10 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as well, we expect a lot more from managers. We're so much more educated in terms of actually respect, dignity, psychological safety.
And your rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And we expect that. So there is a massive amount of pressure, and a very different amount of pressure now being put on managers as well, along with constant upskilling, them having, you know, compassion, empathy and support, and viewing other people actually as a human and not just an employee is one of the most important things.
And I suppose that, you know, that is, again, it's top down. You've got to support the people who have to do this. But what is very interesting, this is from the Stevens Institute of Technology, this research into Jekyll and Hyde managers. They found that bosses cause more stress when they unpredictably lurch between the good and the bad, rather than just if they were just nasty all the time. That is just, that you're then kind of in flux.
Absolutely. It's the classic walking on eggshells. If you're going into work and you're walking on eggshells, what's happening, it means, is that you're going in and you don't know whether you're going to have to go into fight or flight that day, or whether actually your arousal system is going to be within that soothing system and you're going to be calm. So it's kind of almost like, if you think about the classic abusive relationship, a person doesn't know whether the abuser is going to be abusive that day, in what way, or if they're not. It's almost the exact same thing here. Unpredictability and uncertainty has a lot more negative impact for us as humans than what certainty does. And the reason for that is because we're always being prepared for, do I need to run away? Do I need to fight? And the impact that that has. So actually having an inconsistent manager is so damaging for us physically and for our mental health as well.
So how do you deal with that as an employee? Going into a manager who you know, you don't really know what mood they're going to be in that day. Listen, we're coming up to Christmas time, I'm sure, in a lot of industries at the minute, there's a lot of people under a huge amount of stress. So if you're an employee going into a situation like that, what advice would you have for them?
Sure. So one of the biggest things I always say is, they're human and you're human, so you also deserve the same respect. So the first thing I would say, as always, is make sure you start to set boundaries. Do it in a firm but a polite way. So for example, if you're dealing with a boss who may be volatile in one-to-one meetings with you and you want to discuss something, don't forget to say, it's very simple. Look, this conversation is really important for the both of us to have. However, I feel we should come back to it when we're both in more of a calm manner. So really setting those boundaries in times of time. And if there is behaviour that you're finding, actually, this is not acceptable, that you say that. Document absolutely everything. This is one of the most important things. So document communication, particularly if the person is being a bit more aggressive or...
Oh, can I ask there, you know, when you say document, because this is very interesting. Are you allowed to take recordings? Say you're in a meeting with a manager and you're like, I don't know what this person is going to say and I don't know what they're going to say afterwards. Can you record it?
No.
No.
So what people do is they record it for themselves, thinking it can be used. But in order for you to use recorded information, let's say if this was to go further and you wanted to go to HR or take it to court or anything like that, you have to have permission from the other person in order to use the recording. What I say to people in that situation is, take notes directly afterwards and physically send them in an email to somebody, whether that's HR, whether that's, let's say if it's your solicitor that you're dealing with this on, it's something a little bit bigger. If you take notes directly afterwards and you document and send it, then they can be used instead.
So from a manager's point of view, if they're dealing with an employee who they feel might be a bit precious, should they be taking notes? Because they could be dealing with 20 employees, so it's quite hard for them then to take notes on every single encounter they have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would completely, it works the other way as well. So for example, if you think maybe someone is underperforming and this has been going on for some time, or that you might have to have maybe a difficult conversation and the person mightn't be open to those type of conversations, as a manager, it's really important that you also have that written kind of trail as well. Or if you're someone who's in a leadership and you manage many people who manage other people, that they also have that trail going up to you as well in formal communication like emails.
I'm glad that this is all has to be documented, everything, because it could go against you, vice versa.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we see generationally, right? You know, we go back 100 years, there was no such thing as a weekend for an awful lot of people. So the workplace has changed a huge amount in a short space of time. But I have never heard so much about the difference between the generations, we'll say, with some people going, sure, they don't know how to work. They're the younger ones, you know, they're coming in and it's like, you know, just get down to it. They don't have the concentration, all this kind of stuff. Am I seeing that because I'm at a different age? Has there always been that culture clash between the ages when it comes to work? Or is there a different way of working now that people are like, no, don't push me, I don't have to do that?
It's a different way of working. If you think about it, look at work-life balance. before people gave everything, like if we think about even leave, you'd have heard, I haven't taken a leave day in 5 years, I haven't taken a sick day. And that's because that was normalised within society. You're a hard worker, you're a grafter, that's what you did. Now we're like, well, 1 second here, there's a whole other part of my life than just what work is. I'm a human being outside of this. I might be a parent, I might be a partner, I might be a friend to somebody. I deserve to have my holidays, I deserve to have my breaks, I deserve to have time that's not interrupted. And if we think about if we do work in a toxic environment, can you imagine not having that separation from that and how mentally damaging that would be for you? So we are just a different generation because we're aware that actually we deserve time away. We deserve not to be put under as much pressure as what we are. We have a life outside of work. We've other priorities, and actually they're far more important for us, for our own mental health and well-being and our physical health, than actually what our job is. We're just a number. Like the job, I always say this to everyone, the work will continue. If any of us call in sick any day, someone else will be there. If we decide to leave tomorrow morning, someone else will replace us. People forget that. I always say to everyone, you concentrate on you as a human being first. Work is only something that should come way down.
Well, that means one of your workmates will have to cover for you as well. So it works both ways. Very difficult situation.
But that just made me feel very good about our workplace, to be honest. We've got a nice thing. It's lovely. I hope someone said a nice one today. Dr. Tara Logan Buckley, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it.
We'd love to hear from you on this as well. 0896 111 111. What's your work environment like at home?
Ours is the best in the world. Up next, sparks fly, because Deric's getting a lesson in silversmithing.
Yes, and we're going to be in the kitchen with Alberto Rossi after this short break.
I mean, the best workplace.
There you go. Hello, welcome back. Now, we were talking earlier on about deliveries. We've talked about an awful lot this morning already.
An awful lot of stuff.
But getting stuff delivered to your door, and I see this all the time. The delivery drivers pull up and just throw it behind a plant pot, take a picture and move on.
Stuff there,
So there's a picture here. This is how one of my deliveries arrived. We should just say that an awful lot of this is the Wild West when it's not with certain companies. So that I live on a road, so that there's no driveway or anything. So that was just left there. And fair play for no one robbing that.
They hung it up.
The best. Now it does look open.
Yeah.
And I still haven't gotten it off my neighbour, so maybe it has been robbed. But anyway, an awful lot of these delivery drivers have to get like 14 deliveries done an hour or you don't get paid properly. Do you know what I mean? They're under so much pressure.
But it's shocking. It shouldn't be allowed because there literally stuff can be robbed. And then who's the comeback and the delivery driver says, well, it's there. I left it there. And they go, well, it's not there now. How can you prove?
Grania they have to send you a picture. Grania
they send you a picture.
You have to get it in your hands.
Can we see Carmel's picture? Right, so Carmel's got a picture up. I live on the main road and this was an expensive item that had been instructed to be put over the fence or at the side of the house. And this is just left at the front door. So imagine an expensive item like that. Somebody could just come along and rob it.
My dog Bobby loves my makeup deliveries. Waits for all my packages that are left on my front doorstep. What has Bobby done to the Oh, no.
Wouldn't you be raging?
I'm not joking. I would be absolutely raging.
We leave the dog out the back of the house as well. Anything that gets lobbed over, destroyed. But a dog on the left.
Lobbing parcels over. Like it could break and everything. It's
it's either that or leave at the front door could get robbed.
God.
0896 111 for any more of your stories and photos.
Yes. Now, Deric is discovering the history of Newbridge silverware this morning.
He's watching them perfect their craft in the factory.
Deric, tell us more.
Yeah, perfecting their craft is right, guys. Welcome down here. In fact, we're behind the scenes live here at Newbridge Silverware. It's great to be here on the factory floor. Rhoda Mackey, good morning to you.
Good morning, Deric.
Rhoda, before we get into the manufacturing process itself, and it's quite an in-depth process, give us a rundown of the history of the place.
Yeah, so Newbridge Silverware was set up 90 years ago this year. It was set up in 1934 when Newbridge would have been a garrison town. So after the British Army left Ireland, a company called Newbridge Cutlery was set up, and they were set up to manufacture cutlery on site. And we took in all the old metalwork machinery that the British Army left behind. And we learned how to manufacture cutlery using their machinery.
And of course, just outside us, the road is called Cutlery Road, out to the factory.
Yeah, we were originally set up on Cutlery Road in the old stables that used to belong to the British Army. Over time, we had to move across to a bigger facility here. Yeah, the company done really well. We employed up to 600 craftsmen at the peak of production. Done quite well until Ireland joined the EU in the early 80s. We were no longer competitive. Tariffs had been lifted and we couldn't compete with competition coming from across Europe, Sheffield, Japan. So we needed to find something new to manufacture.
This is obviously a family-run business, and a lot of generations have come through here over the years, right?
Yeah, it is still an Irish-owned, family-run business. Generations of families working here. We have grandfathers, sons, even granddaughters working here. So yeah, generations of families have come through Newbridge Silverware.
Not only that, we've a lot of famous faces have passed through your doors as well.
Yeah, people like Maureen O'Hara would have visited Newbridge Silverware, Olivia Newton-John, Bill and Hillary Clinton would have dined using Newbridge Silverware cutlery. Even the Queen of England, when she was on her historic state visit to Ireland, she would have dined at Dublin Castle using Newbridge Silverware.
And I believe Olivia Newton-John, in fact, she visited a couple of times like Maureen O'Hara.
Yes, she did. Olivia Newton-John visited in 2018. She opened up her own exhibition here at our Museum of Style Icons. So she opened up her exhibition. She was about to sell off some garments and outfits from the likes of Bad Sandy outfit. And we housed that here for 2 months, and she visited for a number of days to promote her exhibition.
It's great to have them down here.
I headed back to LA and sold for $1 million.
Wow, incredible. Yeah. Now, the manufacturing process, it's a 7-step process. Talk us through it.
Yeah, we're going to show you a knife handle today. So we would start off using our own dies and tools. We'd have 19 patterns at Newbridge Silverware. So we start off by using a nickel silver. We'll put it onto a guillotine and cut out the shape or the size that's needed for today. We will then move on to a shanking press. And on the shanking press, using our die, we will drop about 300 pounds of pressure to cut out the shape of a knife handle, but that'll also put the pattern onto it as well.
Okay, so we have some shots there of the team at work on air. So this is actually the process, and in fact, it's quite a loud process as well. So that's why
it is. Yeah. So we recorded a bit of that earlier because it is a very loud process. Our shanking machine, what you see there now, that would be the old Birmingham mint press. So that was used by the British to put the pattern onto their currency. We're using it today to imprint the pattern onto our cutlery. And moving on from that one, next you will see how they're going to go on to clipping. So after they have put the pattern and the shape onto the knife handle, we'll move on to clipping, where they are going to clip out the 2 halves of a knife handle. So at this stage then we will come out of there with 2 halves of a knife handle after being clipped out, and that will have to be soldered back together here. First you will see how it's linished to polish it up, get it ready to go on for soldering, and then you'll see later on how we have to polish it. We'd even have, from clipping, we would have small pieces of offcuts. And originally, these were our jewellery pieces. We started to manufacture jewellery late 80s, early 90s, and we used these offcuts to manufacture our jewellery. Now, over time, the jewellery line became so big at Newbridge Silver, we've had to move on to a different process.
So these were actually, I mean, going to the waste bin. Yeah, but you weren't, you said, right, okay, let's focus on sustainability here.
Yeah. Through research and development, these would have been melted down in Birmingham, sent back to us again to reuse. But over time, through research and development, they realised that they could turn these into jewellery. So that line has become so big today that we have moved on to, we've invested in a water jet technology for our jewellery, but we now manufacture the likes of Christmas decorations or tie pins from the offcuts.
Okay, finally then we move on to the next piece.
Then we'll move on to soldering.
Next stage, yes.
So coming into this room, the craftsmen will linish, so they will clean it up good enough that it's ready to go for soldering. And you'll see Mick behind us here, he's using a flux glue to hold it together, pour in a silver soldering powder and place it into this machine behind us called a soldering machine. And he will send it through this machine twice. Coming out of there, the knife handle is soldered back together.
Yeah, so Mick Dowling here. Mick, good morning to you, Mick. Tell us what you're actually doing here, Mick.
I'm actually putting 2 half handles together with flux and solder.
Okay. And obviously, I see a flame here as well.
Oh, yeah, that flame.
You pass it through that flame, do you?
Oh, yeah, I think a temperature around 800 degrees.
800 degrees? Yeah. So you're working in such close proximity to it. Is it a difficult process to do?
Yeah, it's quite labour intensive, all right.
Okay.
But you get used to it.
You get used to it, and I believe a couple of generations of your family, Mick, have gone through here.
Oh, well, I have my brothers working here at the minute, yeah, and I had 2 uncles as well in here.
Okay, so it's great. So you're ruling the roost, so to speak.
Well, I don't know about that now.
All right, Goramila Mahagut, Mick. So there we have it. I mean, so it's such it's such an intensive process, right? And there's 7 steps to it, and each one has to be followed quite carefully.
Yeah, it is quite labour intensive. So it's handcrafted. Coming out from Mick, we will go on for polishing next. And there's even 4 stages of polishing, different size pads on each polishing machine to get up to a higher level of polish. We'll go on for hafting, how we try to get the blade and the handle together, before we finish off with silver plating, packaging on site, the Newbridge Silverware Blue. It'll be sold here in the store or sent around the country or exported abroad.
And we all have a little piece of it in our cupboards at home.
Every house in Ireland seems to have that blue box.
All right. Where can we find out more online?
www.newbridgesilver.com.
All right, okay. We'll have more here a little bit later on this morning. Of course, we're going to be dressing the table for the festive feast ahead with the one and only Donegal's Noel Cunningham. But for now, guys, are we twinning? Here this morning. Twinning is winning, right?
Looking
handsome.
good,
I can see you in
guys.
Dublin.
Looking good.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Deric. Very
Thanks,
interesting
Deric,
that
yeah.
was. Thank you very much. Right, let's talk cooking, because coming up next, Chef Alberto Rossi is here with a winter warmer for
Yeah,
us.
he's making us a sausage and pumpkin pasta after the break. We'll see you then. Now, thanks for staying with us. We're in the kitchen for a hearty Italian pasta dish.
And who better with it? Chef Alberto Rossi from the Intercontinental is here to make, what are we having? Pumpkin and sausage
Pumpkin,
pasta.
well, we do, pumpkin and sausage pasta, okay? So pumpkin, obviously, now being winter, pumpkin, you find it everywhere, you know?
Of
And in
course,
Italian
Halloween,
cooking,
they can't get rid of it, yeah.
exactly. And also, especially me coming from the north side of Italy, pumpkin is used a lot.
And you're just
Yeah.
delighted to not be cooking turkey and ham, I'd say, at the minute, because
Thank
of
you
the
very
hotel.
much. Yes, we put turkeys yesterday, we cooked hams yesterday.
Crazy at the minute.
And it's only, what, the 28th of November?
Yeah.
We have a lot time to go, you know?
Oh, wow.
So
yeah,
it's,
you're gonna
but
be
look,
fed up a Christmas
yeah.
dinner then soon. So this is nice alternative.
It is. And, you know, and also we put up the Christmas decoration quite early, beginning of November, usually, you know, because it's a hotel and people come and they need to... But I'm like, Christmas trees on the 8th of December.
Oh, yes,
You know?
okay. Well, that's
I lose my mind for stuff like that, you know?
I'm with you on that. Well, maybe at home you can put it up at the
So
end.
Exactly.
the pumpkin then just goes into a pan, does it?
Yes, so what we do is we're gonna have to cook everything in one pan, okay? So first you have a pan over medium heat, a little bit of oil in it, and you have your sausage inside,
What
okay?
kind of sausage is it?
So this is called Italian sausage, and you can find it in most of the shops. It's a little bit more fatty, and the grain is bigger than the Irish sausage. It's quite minced, let's say. This one is a little bit more bigger, okay? And you cook it. First of all, you have to take it off.
Take the skin out of it,
skin
off
off,
it,
okay?
okay.
Or the casing, as they call it, you know? Because sometimes for stuff like this, the casing is not natural. So it might be, I'm not saying plastic, but it ain't something that you want to eat. So you take it apart and you cook it over medium heat until, you know, it cooks off a little bit.
Sizzle
okay?
it up. Okay.
And it releases a nice, beautiful flavor.
So I presume you don't need to put any oil in for that?
Well, you put in a little bit because although there is the fat, it takes a while to render. You know, the more you cook it, the fat will release itself and all the flavor. Okay. So you take it, you start it, and then you also want to add your pumpkin. So the pumpkin, in this case, I have this pumpkin. But you can use butternut squash. Okay. Whatever pumpkin you find, even the one left over from your carving, you can use them, okay? Now, the pumpkin is quite sweet and it's quite starchy, so you gotta be careful, okay? So in this case, I just took the skin off, as you can see.
What do you mean careful? Careful in what? So
Careful, because if you don't go around and move it around, it might stick to the bottom of the pan, or if you have the pan too high. I always say the control of the heat is very important. When we say low heat, medium heat, high heat, it makes a difference. If you have everything cooking full blast,
I
you
do.
burn everything.
Oh, okay.
You know? So you have to make sure that you
says it all.
regulate how the heat is, okay? So here now we have the pumpkin cut, and you take the sausage off the pan, okay? And you put it in a little bowl, okay? As you can see, I only cooked it for a couple of minutes. It doesn't need to cook too long, okay? And then you put in your pumpkin, okay?
On the same medium heat again?
In the same medium heat, okay? You put in a little bit of onion, or I always like to use shallots. It's a little bit lighter in flavor, and it's also small, instead of opening a big onion and then have it around the kitchen. And when you open the refrigerator, it's you know?
Empty onions everywhere.
Exactly. So then you have here your pumpkin. You put a little bit of salt. And then what you do is you take the water and you put it in the pan, okay?
Is that the pasta water?
No, in this case, this is just normal water, because this will take about, I would say, 25 minutes to half an hour to cook down.
Really?
Pumpkin, yeah. It's quite starchy, heavy.
Okay.
So don't put on the pasta until your pumpkin is ready.
Okay. So this is it then after 25 minutes?
This is after 25 minutes. As you can see, it's nice and creamy, and I added the sausage back in, okay?
Oh, is the sausage in there
The
already?
sausage is back in, yes.
Okay.
So
And-
after 20 minutes, that will mush down?
Well,
like
I
that?
use the back of my spoon. Now, if you don't want to use the spoon, you can all use a masher, a potato masher. These things are fantastic for everything. You can even chase,
Yeah, the kids.
you know...
And
or
would you not like it a bit lumpy, no?
Well, it will always stay a bit lumpy because you're not putting it in a machine to make a puree.
Yeah.
So you still have
some lumps in it.
Some lumps in it that you
Right.
want that, okay?
Yeah.
So then, now the pasta is cooked. Obviously, I put it on a little bit earlier.
And what kind of pasta is this?
These are called mezzi rigatoni. So it's a short pasta. It's not a huge pasta.
And why are you using this one?
Because it's much better. If you have long pasta, it'd be messy in this case, okay?
And this will soak up all the
Exactly.
sausage.
So
and the
then you
pumpkin.
have your pasta, you put it inside. And as Tommy said before, you use the cooking water. Yes, in this case, I use some of the cooking water, okay? To make it a little bit more creamy.
To kind of thicken it up a bit.
Exactly,
Right,
because
okay.
like in the pumpkin, in the pasta, there is amide. And while you're cooking it, it releases in the water. So then you can use the water to water down your sauce. And because there's starch in it, it will make it nice and thick. Okay, so you can see like that. Then I always add a little bit of parsley, color also.
I did that with a carbonara the other day and put the pasta water into it and stuff. It thickened it up.
Exactly, that's how the recipe is. And I'm glad that you did.
There you go.
There you go.
You know?
Learning.
Oh, he's learning. He's learning.
There you go.
After all these years.
So then there is your pasta, and we serve it. Okay.
Wow, look at that.
Now you always put in a little bit of parmesan at the end. So I have some here. So and then
Now, see, Alberto, when you've done a pumpkin or butternut squash risotto before.
Yes.
You put the butternut squash and stuff in the oven that time.
in that case,
Could I do it like that and kind of put it down
you could do
and
it,
then
you
add
can
it
do
into
in
a
there.
risotto then
Absolutely.
instead of this
Or
pasta?
you can start it with the rice if you dice it fine, and it cooks with the rice and it breaks down. Okay?
Are we getting the parmesan? Oh, there's the
You
parmesan.
do a little
there.
parmesan, and
Beautiful.
then I have here amaretti di Saronno.
Oh, and
they are
an
these
amaretti
nice
biscuit over top of
Yeah,
it.
Biscuits.
try it, because this will give you a little bit of crunch on the pasta, and trust me, make the difference.
Wow.
Enjoy.
It's always such a treat when you come in now. Love this.
This is lovely.
From a breakfast, I'm starving. Let's try
see.
it.
And it's a different flavor, pumpkin. You know, you have the sweetness and everything, but then you have the sausage that brings the peppery and the saltiness.
Alberto. Absolutely lovely. Thank you so much.
I love the
Very much.
crunch of the biscuit.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Coming up in the next hour, we meet the man in tune with the nation's birds.
We are. Seán Ronayne is going to be talking to us about
What is he?
recording 10,000 bird songs. That's after the break.
See you back here very shortly.
Hello, welcome back. Here is what is in store for the final hour of this morning show. Are you fed? You're happy?
I'm
You okay?
happy,
It's
yeah.
good.
Probably
It's
go
good.
for
It's good.
seconds. Fresh after his big win last night at the An Post Irish Book Awards, bird song maestro and author Seán Ronayne will be here in studio to talk about his new book, Nature Boy.
So lovely, just lovely. Now from chirps to threads. Alan, what's happening on the catwalk?
What's a chirp?
Chirp, chirp.
Chirp, chirp. Birds. No?
Yes, Lauren is here with us this morning. What are we going to be looking at?
Chirping.
Chirping, yeah.
Chirping.
What?
Yeah. Chic chirping this morning. I've got some really essential pieces coming up to the end of the year. What do you need in your wardrobe? And we've got fashion choices everywhere. I've got, starting with the little black dress. It's great. All our looks there are coming from the Casual Company. I'm going to show you how you can accessorize them, but also kind of elevate the black dress. So we'll have knee-high boots, we've got some belts, hairbands. I'm going to talk you through how you can get that look. And we have some nice casual comfy ones too.
Okay, looking forward to that's coming up a little later on. Now, how are things going in Newbridge this morning, Deric?
Fantastic, Al. Well, the Christmas countdown is well and truly on. And would you believe we've just nabbed our etiquette expert, the one and only Noel Cunningham. Good morning, Noel.
And a very good morning. How lovely to be here at Newbridge Silverware, my Aladdin's cave. And you know what, Deric? Christmas is all about excess. More is more. And it doesn't matter. You dress up, you give lovely gifts, you do the most perfect table, and just make it an occasion, the only time of the year now that we all sit down with family and friends to enjoy a meal and an experience.
And you've got some lovely gift ideas a little bit later
I
on.
have fabulous gift ideas coming up, just to bring, you don't want to arrive at someone's house with one arm longer than the other, even if it's your mum, and you make an effort.
You've got to look after your mum.
Yeah.
By the way, do you dress like this on Christmas Day?
Dress. It's the day. And if you want to worry about where you should wear your napkin, if you're wearing a little bit of Versace, darling, put the napkin anywhere you wish to protect it.
There you go. He always dresses to impress. More coming your way at 9:35. But for now, back to you in studio. You're showing me up with this now.
Wow. Name dropping the Versace there, coming up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Fair play to you, Noel.
There we go.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. We're chatting. There we go. Anyway, we're chatting all about deliveries. And we're chatting about Deric.
This is how we are when different things are on. We're chatting all the time.
So, deliveries, we're talking obviously, a lot of people are shopping and shopping online at the minute. Christmas is coming up, and we're asking you about where have the delivery drivers left
We've
your
got a
packages?
picture here of a package.
There we go.
Of how it was. Right, so,
Okay.
Karen, delivery left in a safe space by a courier recently in the middle of the driveway. Literally, it was just thrown from the van.
Oh my God, look at that.
There
Isn't
you
that
go.
shocking?
That's insane. The delivery man hung my delivery off a farm gate last Friday, a field over from my house.
It's over there, love. To see it there.
To be fair, if I was a delivery driver, I'd get some kick out of this.
Oh, would you
Do know what I mean?
stop it? You shouldn't be encouraging that. Now, our postman puts parcels in our green bin to save us having to go to the sorting office, which is great.
Well done,
But we're
Postie.
in
Very handy. The
the
very next one is, my son bought football boots, very expensive ones. The delivery man put them in the wheelie bin. He didn't tell my son. Alas, it was bin day, and the boots went with the wheelie bin. A lot of choice words were spoken that day. Can you imagine the new boots?
No.
The new boots were
gone.
thrown out.
See, it's okay. It's great for you if you know it's going into the wheelie bin, but look what happened.
We received a medical in a massive letters device that is to be signed for. We were not at home. He left it on the windowsill. It was during a storm, and thankfully our neighbour found it blowing around the estate and kept it for us.
That's just mad stuff. I think my delivery man has a competition with himself
This is great.
to see how far he can throw deliveries from. I've seen him throw them from anywhere from halfway down the drive to frisbee throwing from the neighbour's garden into mine.
I mean, it would be raging, but at the same time, can you imagine?
Every time we expect a delivery to my mum's, even though she's usually there, the parcel gets thrown in over the wall. This time we left specific instructions as we didn't want it on the wet grass. Mum wasn't there on this one particular day. The instructions couldn't have been
Clearer.
any clearer. Where do you think the delivery was? It was on the wet grass. Hey!
Oh, well.
Oh, we love it.
Thank God we didn't bring up where delivery drivers park. Do you know the way they just park, stop in the middle of the road and jump out?
No, and just
That's a
run
whole
in.
different
That's
conversation.
a whole different day.
Yeah.
Keep those messages coming in to us. You can WhatsApp us on 089 611 111, and we'd love to see those pictures as well.
Also, write a reply to delivery drivers. We've realised you're on
I'm
a
with
very
you.
tough schedule to try to get 15 or 20 packages done an hour. So it's a lot of pressure free.
It's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous pressure that they're under and how they're paid
You
these
shouldn't
days.
throw packages in a driveway.
But
Didn't you get it? You got it. You'd be grand.
Up next, he walks with the animals, talks with the animals, and sings with the animals.
Yes,
The birdies.
Author Seán Ronayne's going to chat about transforming bird songs into chart-topping albums after the break. Now, our next guest, pretty amazing guy, has made it his mission to record every bird song in Ireland, a project which has led to a hugely successful documentary, an album, and now a book.
We're delighted to welcome ornithologist and author Seán Ronayne. How are you? How are you, Seán?
Good morning.
How are you?
We've got to get straight into it because last night at the An Post Irish Book Awards, your biography, Nature Boy, you won Best Biography. Congratulations.
Thanks so much. It was a big surprise, and it was absolutely lovely for me. You know, that book is dedicated to my daughter Laya, so I wanted it for her, and I wanted it for nature, for Irish nature. You know,
your daughter, because you obviously collected the awards. I believe your speech last night was just had the place in bits.
My boss was crying. We were crying at the table. It was beautiful.
I was crying myself, but when I go up on stage like that, I think it's a defence mechanism.
I black out and I don't remember what I said. And I came off thinking, God, what did I say on there? I had some stuff written out and I ended up throwing it halfway through.
He did.
You know?
You did a hell of a job with the sounds of things.
Well,
Thanks,
you also made a
thanks.
point about where Laya was born, didn't you?
Oh God, yeah. Well, will I tell you? Yes, sure. I was up here 5 weeks ago with my partner Alba, and we had a series of events lined up for radio and TV. For
You were meant to be here.
We were meant to be here, yeah. And the taxi was to come to the hotel at 6 a.m. And Alba woke me up at 5 a.m. shaking my shoulders. And I'm thinking she's a bit early. And she was panicking. She said, "Seán, get up. My waters have broken and my contractions are really strong. We need to go." And so we dropped everything, went to the National Maternity Hospital. Laya was born a few hours later.
Class.
Yeah, so she's the boss ever since.
Well, that's it. Congratulations, because while you were meant to be celebrating last night, you were up half the night with her, so that's welcome to fatherhood.
Yeah, thanks.
Listen, talk to us about this. Nature Boy is your new book, but like your interest in bird and bird song, where did it come from?
It was always meant to be, really. So my father and my grandfather were both very much into birds and nature in general. And when I was young, I was a hyperactive kid, and I still am, really. And my father learned that an immersion in nature was what was necessary to calm me down. And so we would go out and just soak it all up. And he would imitate the sounds of different birds, and he would ask me to. We would play a game. He said, "What am I copying here?" And it was a lot of fun, and it was my introduction into a world of nature and bird sound.
It's so amazing that your father was so attuned to what it is that you needed as a child.
Because I think I'm the same as him. You know, he saw himself in me, and he was the very same with his father when he was young. You know, so I hope to show Laya the Irish birds soon.
Very soon, I would imagine. Because we've all been following along since you've done this. And Birdsong, the documentary, I think it just hit people in a way. In the core, you know, an awful lot of people are in the country because you're on this mission to record every bird in Ireland, 200 species of birds. Are you at 199 now?
That's right, yeah, 199.
Who's left?
Yeah, so I got a few kind of unexpected, unusual ones. So I still have 3 resident birds to go. So there's grey partridge, and that's in one site in the Midlands. Red-breasted merganser, which is a seagoing duck, and the last one is a bird called great skua, and I think it's last because it's so aggressive. So they're called, you know, the pirates of the sea, the pirates of the air, and what they do is they chase down other birds and they force them to give up their fish meal, and if they swallow it, they'll attack them until they regurgitate it. But when you go to where they nest, they'll attack you too. They dive bomb you, and they've got this great big hulking bill, you know, so
wow,
I have to build up the courage for that one.
Where are they? Where would you find them?
So they've only become established as a breeding species in recent years in Ireland, and they're in offshore islands, mostly in the northwest, offshore islands and far-flung peninsulas.
So what would it take to go and, like, are you have to go out with the umbrellas or something up to try and make sure
so you couldn't wear a hard hat because you'd be at risk of damaging the bird's beak then if it hit you. So
hit you.
I worked in a seabird island in the UK before, and what you have to do there is you put your hand like this and you wave your fingers, so they'll take your fingers rather than your head, or wear a peak cap and put it up so there's a dead space, and they'll hit the air in the dead space, like, you know.
You did say when you were out with some starlings, we had the wonderful photographer James Crosby here, Crosby here last week, and he's been capturing starlings, and he sent you off to a flock of 250,000 starlings, but didn't tell you should have had an umbrella.
Yeah. So that was one of the most amazing shots of the film from Birdsong, and it was thanks to James that we were in the right spot. He knows this starling flock like the back of his hand, and he told us, if you go to this portion of the reeds in the first week of March, they will be there. And we went there, and there they were. And 250,000 birds come in to roost in the reeds for warmth at night time. And first of all, you hear the whoosh of these wings coming in, and then it sounds like it's raining. But of course, it's not raining. It's the starlings pooping down on you. And we were so excited. It was the first shot of the film, and we said, let's go and make a plan. So we went to this fancy Italian restaurant, and we were getting these looks at the door, and we were thinking, what's wrong? And when we went in the light, we realised we were covered from head to toe in starling poop. You know?
Yeah, thanks for that, James. He probably had a giggle to himself.
I'm sure.
Exactly. In your book, because you won Biography of the Year last night, like, it's an amazing, obviously it's about birds, but it's about your own story as well. And you talk, you nearly died of meningitis
I
at the
did.
age of 18. You talk about
Very
your
close.
diagnosis of autism at 32 as well.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, I suppose.
What was it like looking back on that? Say the meningitis, a frightening time, sure, for you and your family.
Yeah, it was. It was life-changing. Life-changing, bizarrely, in an amazing way. Like, I came so close. Like, I was in resuscitation. Everything was failing. I had septicemia. It was coursing through my body. It was excruciatingly painful. All of my relatives were called in, my brother, my grandparents, to say goodbye. And in the back room outside the resus, there was a social worker and there was a priest there, and they were preparing everyone for my death. Like, it was impending. It was coming. But there were a lot of people there on that day that saved my life. First of all, the 2 doctors from Cove, Dr. Kelleher and Dr. Morahan. But finally, Professor Mary Horgan came in her time off, and she was working my bloods upstairs, and she found out at the last minute that it was meningitis type Y. And, you know, my family did say goodbye to me. They came into the room and said, I had moments of lucidity where I was awake, and I guess
your dad talking about like going through the woods with him, sure, you're so close. Like, my goodness, that's...
It must have been very tough for them. You know, you imagine kind of losing your child at the age of 18. Like, but look, I came through it, and I came back stronger than ever. And it made me realise that, you know, anything is around that corner. You never know what's around the corner. And you've got to grab life by the horns, and whatever you love, you know, give it your all, and enjoy yourself, live life, and be happy. And that's kind of the change that it brought about me. You know, I was very shy, and it made me kind of come out of my shell a bit and be more open. And
you have been so incredibly open, like sharing your story. You go through so many instances in your life, but all of it is permeated by nature and what nature means to you. Yeah. You've brought a message to Ireland. I genuinely think you've made people interested and notice.
I hope so, yeah.
Birds in Ireland, how important they are for our ecosystems. But the fact that they're going extinct, you know, 63% are on the verge of extinction.
Yeah.
Is this an awful lot of weight to carry, to sort of feel this is on me now to kind of get this message out there?
Yeah, well, you know, this is what this book is about. Like, you know, because I'm only one person, and I don't have all the answers, and I don't have all the solutions. But what I do have, you know, is a real passion and a real graw for these birds, and I want to bring these stories to people and show them what it is that we have on our doorstep, what beauty and wonder that's out there. And you know, it's free, and it asks nothing of us, only for us to, you know, to protect it and to care for it. And we need it. We're all a part of it. We're all part of one big ecosystem. And once we start losing all these species, it's a domino effect. Imagine a game of Jenga. You can only take so many sticks before the whole thing collapses. And you know, we still have time, and there are great people out there doing great things, and we need to be hopeful, and we need to get out there, and we need to cherish it. We need to embrace it, and I think if we do that,
when does it change?
We'll be okay.
When does it change? Because I think my kids at the age they're 4 and 7 primary school, and it's all about nature.
Yeah.
When does it change that we begin to just forget about it and we don't appreciate?
I don't know. Like, you know what? There was a point in my life when I think it was when I was around 12 or 13. I guess it was my awkward teenager phase where I pretended that I didn't like nature, and I'll never forget it. I regret it completely, and I always will, because in that, I think it was a few months, 2-month period, there was a pod of killer whales, orcas, came into Cork Harbour. I think they were teaching me a lesson, and I think I was the only person in Cove that never saw that pod of killer whales, because I was pretending I didn't like nature.
Trying to be cool.
Yeah.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And look, there's nothing uncool about nature. It's absolutely beautiful. Where do we go when we're stressed? Where do we go on the weekends? We go to the woods. We go to the beaches. Every one of us. And whether we realise it or not, it's nature that's calling us, because it brings us down. You know, this modern life that we created, all of these machine noises, all of this hustle and bustle, this has only happened in the last 100 years, but we've evolved with the sounds of nature over millennia, you know, and it'll always bring us down. It will always calm us, and it will always be there for us. And I think we don't have to do much to give back to it, you know.
There's something about the way you speak that gets into your soul, and it just makes people sit up and listen. It's incredibly powerful. It's really beautiful, Seán, and the book is stunning as well.
Thanks so much.
The Irish Book Award, which you brought in for us today. Much love to Alba, your fabulous partner,
Yeah,
and
she's
Leah as
watching
well.
there now, I'd say.
Give her a little shout down if you want to say down this camera.
Love you both lots. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you
Your
so
dad
much,
is a
Seán.
legend.
This is
And
the
both
brand
my
new book,
parents as well, of course.
Nature Boy. A
Yeah.
pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, Seán.
And
Thanks very much.
congratulations on the mission that you're doing. Good
Yeah.
on you. Keep spreading
Thanks.
good word out there. Fair
Thanks
play.
a lot.
Welcome back. There's a cold snap, so that means you need to wear clothes.
That's, yeah, it'd be great if you did. Comfy and warm clothes, maybe. Here with some inspiration is stylist Lorna Waitman. Good morning to you, Lorna.
Good morning. All our models are wearing clothes.
Yeah,
All of us are wearing, we never wear clothes on this show.
Thankfully, or we'd be taken off it.
Yeah, make my job so easy.
Yeah.
Wear clothes. Let's get straight to it. Hannah is our first look today, Lorna.
She is, and we're talking, this is the comfy bit. The comfy clothes bit.
Lovely.
And what is lovely about this is, firstly, I cannot highlight how lovely and soft the fabric is in these two pieces. They are so soft against your skin.
I'm not joking, only for this is tight, this looks like Alan Hughes.
I know.
This is exactly what you wear, from the shoes to everything. Anyway.
When I leave this again.
I was thinking of you when I put this
into
together. This hoodie, oh, it's lovely. It's got a lovely kind of V neckline on it. So it kind of is an elevated hoodie, not like what we think about with athleisure, for example. This one folds really beautifully, and you'll notice it's got two seams, one underneath the bust line and one just hovering over the waistline, that actually give it a little bit of subtle definition, which is lovely and makes it a little bit dressy,
And it's
which
got
I like.
the waterfall.
Kind of like a curved, which is lovely. But again, you can kind of angle it wherever you want over your shoulder. It's to give it whatever kind of feel you like. And
look at these.
The joggers are amazing. It's like a step up from a legging. And these are brand new to the casual company. They have a drawstring waist, so you can actually
high
put them
waist.
high waist, but
Holding
you can
in the bit of
actually
the belly.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love
so
that,
do I.
especially after a baby. I'm delighted with anything that holds up my trousers. But these are great because you can just put them wherever you feel comfortable. So whether it's higher or lower, wherever you like, and the drawstring will keep it in place.
So Alan's wearing them in navy today. These are them in cream. They're the same shoe. I'm not joking. They're the same shoe.
We should have just put you in there
I know.
Alan, instead, shouldn't we? But they also have a cuff at the bottom of them, which I love, because the other way sometimes with leggings and joggers, they kind of just finish, but these actually give it a really lovely complete look. And then just with runners as well, you get that nice little finish with the look. So it does make it look really chic, even though it's something that I think would be what you would wear. I would live in something like this.
Lovely.
When I'm off duty. It's like that off-duty uniform, which I love.
I love it. And then
Absolutely
just a little
lovely.
earring.
And a little earring, even if you're dressing down, don't be afraid to accessorise. I think it always adds a little bit of extra detail. And the gold is a really nice combination with that beigey tone and the kind of the black joggers, which is lovely.
Lovely.
Okay,
Thank
lovely,
you,
thank
Hannah.
you.
Christina's here with our second look. This is a dress.
This is a dress. We got a little taste of this earlier on. Now, this is the little black dress, which is firstly something every capsule wardrobe should have, because it will never fail you. Whether it's workwear or you're going out, you can chop and change it to suit any occasion. And this one I love because of 3/4 length sleeve. You've got this soft square neckline, an empire line as well. So it's kind of highlighting, you know, the belt is actually separate to it.
Separate,
Yeah, so I
you
have
just added that.
exactly, and that's just around the seam of the dress as well. So you can remove that as you want to. But it's also the fit and flare style of this dress which really sets it apart, which I love it. It moves really nicely, even though it's quite a heavy fabric. Also has pockets, which we love, and the length is great.
So let's talk about the length, because it's just dropping below the knee, and then you've done that lovely kind of Jennifer Aniston thing with the boot.
Yeah, I think this has kind of become a little bit of a signature styling thing for me. I love it, where you've got a longer length over your knee-high boots, and it gives this really lovely, sophisticated look about it. And I think we sometimes will just gravitate towards a shoe or an ankle boot. You can get another wear out of your knee-high boots by styling it like this, and I think this is absolutely lovely. And also, there are two separate things in your wardrobe that will work so hard for you, which I think really love. Headband as well. So if you don't want to go down the accessories route, hair accessories at this time of year are so popular, and it does add a kind of feminine detail to it as well. And I think when you have all of these kind of staple capsule pieces from the casual company, all of the little details like earrings and headbands really kind of give you that opportunity to personalise the look.
Gorgeous. Christina, thank you so much for that. So we're going from dressy back to casual with Juliet.
Back to Juliet. We've got a little animal print here as well. And also what's really good about this look is that we've now got a cropped jumper. And you might hear the words cropped and go, oh no, I definitely can't wear that. But when you have cropped, and especially one like this that just hovers over the waistline, it kind of cinches you in at the narrowest part of your body and then elongates the lower half. So you're not wearing something really baggy over something that has a bit of volume too. So you keep your body in proportion, which is really, really nice. And this one has a lovely wide open collar too. So if you wanted to accessorize it with necklaces, anything like that, you absolutely could. We've kept it really simple today. But again, these pieces are things you can actually dress up, because this will look great with a pair of denims, a skirt, anything, because it actually has a lot of versatility.
And you've gone with the leopard print.
And the leopard print joggers, I love
like
these.
yourself?
I know, trying to be very on trend. These have elasticated waist, which is really lovely as well, so you can adjust them where you want to sit. But again, you've got the top is sitting really nicely just where the elastic is on these. You've got a nice looser fit to these too, and I've actually just rolled them up to create a little cuff at the bottom, so you can actually adjust the length depending on how you want to wear them.
Lovely
but
done.
Just with runners, it's nice to kind of create this little cuff, so you shorten them up a little bit too. And again, then if you're a little bit tall, you can roll them down and give you some extra length, which I love as well. But the animal print is really cute as well, especially if you want to just add in a little detail but still retain that lovely comfortable feeling.
Lovely.
Thank you, Juliet.
Great.
Cheers.
Thank you, Juliet. And Hannah's back to us.
Hannah is back with like the kind of the transitional dress, which I love as well. And actually, I'm wearing the same dress in a different print today as well. So I can tell you it feels so comfortable. You've got a lovely kind of V-neck line, very soft. You've got a 3/4 length sleeve, and you know how much we love sleeves on dresses because it means you can wear them so much more and all year round.
And what's the size range?
So the size range in this starts 8 to 10 and then up to 18-20.
Okay,
so you've got a really nice range in this. And also you'll notice what I think is great about it, it's such a good universal fit. The darting starts at the shoulder and comes all the way down over the bust line, right down to the waist. So you don't have a middle seam, you've got a vertical seam instead, which is pockets again, so it makes it really, really flattering. And then just to kind of dress it up a little bit, we've got some skin tone shoes, a little bit of sandal, a little bit kind of more spring. So if you're planning ahead, this is a great one to think about. But the weather's going to get a little bit warmer over the weekend as well, so you might be able to get your sandals out.
And a little bow here with the
We've got a
earrings.
little bow as well, so you've got that kind of emphasis on the hair accessories now as well. But this is quite a pretty look. It's got a little bit of a vintage feel to it, so the bow really kind of stays in tune with the overall look, and the little pearl earring, it looks really cute as well. So the two work really nicely together. But these are all from the Casual company, and definitely focusing on those capsule, easy to wear pieces is a really good thing at this time of year.
Lovely.
It is, and the different style print here on you is gorgeous with the boots as well.
With the boots, yeah, exactly. And this kind of has more of a wintry feel to it.
Lovely.
It certainly does. Lorna, thank you so much
My
for that.
pleasure.
Sorry for my coughing fit.
Just about to say, now, you okay? Along was coughed up.
Now,
You okay?
go ahead.
Will I go ahead?
Yeah,
Okay, coming
go
up
on.
next, Santa's little helper, Deric, has the gift ideas you need this Christmas.
We'll see you back here very shortly.
Hello, you're very welcome back. And now Deric is getting into the festive spirit in Newbridge today.
Yeah, he's getting a head start on his Christmas shopping.
Yeah, he's got some great gift ideas for us. Over to you, Deric.
Yes, guys, getting a head start on the Christmas shopping is right. Not only is it the season for giving, it's also the season for receiving. And Donegal's answer to Father Christmas, ho, 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 no cutting heavens with us. Hello.
I'm not even so sure about that. There's an election coming up. I will be the Minister for Gracious Living. Lovely to see you, Deric, here
Lovely
at Newbridge
to see
Silverware in Kildare. Lovely day out.
Absolutely. Now, Noel, we have a lot of gifts to get through here this morning. And first up, what have we got?
Yes, keep it simple, stupid. Bring a practical gift, something that maybe you start a collection. I absolutely adore this. Look at the detail on this gorgeous silver plate. I would personally use that for a dress plate on a beautiful table. And you can build on it year after year, get another few next year. Or you could serve it for cheese, you could serve it with food items, with little starters, with little hors d'oeuvres. Absolutely gorgeous at €85. a perfect gift to bring or indeed to buy for yourself to start the collection.
A lovely bit of gilded detail here on this as well.
The gilding is beautiful, the detail is beautiful. And you know me, Deric, Christmas is all about the table, the style, the one day of the year we all celebrate and sit down as a family. So go all out to make it extra special.
All right, now next up, if you're looking for a special gift for a lady in your life, I'm loving this one. What have we got?
Well, I mean, from Maharajas to princesses to well-known film stars, they're always the use of the animal, the feline. And look at this, the little tiger detail on this gorgeous gold-plated necklace, which is part of a set as well. It's the stunning gift at €95 to bring to your hostess or for your mum or for a sister. It's the perfect gift that can be worn again and again for all manner of things.
And I mean, if you landed in with this now on Christmas Day, you'll be doing well. We've got a matching set of earrings and a bracelet too.
This is really one of my favourite pieces here. It's gorgeous.
All right, moving on next to the little ones. And if you have a little baba at home?
Well, you know, part of lots of things here for a baby. Every family have had a baby arrive in the last year almost. It doesn't have to be a Christmas baby. But these little first curl and first tooth, I mean, look at.
Oh, look at.
They are just absolutely gorgeous. And you can have them engraved here. And you know how much they are? €40. And
great?
People will keep them forever.
Yeah.
Because they go into a memory box. They will be taken out at different times throughout the child's life. I think it's a very unique gift and very special and lovely to keep.
I spot that little milestone book in the back as well. That's gorgeous, isn't it?
Great, great little, you can make up a baby hamper.
Yeah, which is lovely. Now, we're heading out west. I need these when I'm on the road out to the Aran Islands, these gorgeous little mittens.
Oh. This is, you know, it just springs to mind, you know, the Christmas walk, the winter walk. And this designer,
Patrick Francis
does the very best iron. And look at all the old traditional cable, the faux fur. I mean, it screams Christmas, it screams woodland walk. Absolutely fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
And tucked in behind it, we have this gorgeous, cosy snood.
I will be wearing that snood in Donegal before the day's out, I can tell you. It is gorgeous.
I mean,
and just the comfort, the feel of it, beautiful.
The detail on the knitwork here is beautiful, isn't it, Noel?
And this is all based on, you know, families in the Aran Islands all had their own design. And sadly, that was in case there was a drowning or that sometimes people were identified by the cable on their Aran sweaters.
Wow, so there's a lovely bit of history to that piece.
A lovely bit of history, yes.
Now, I met this gentleman a couple of weeks ago in the RDS, Nevin Maguire. You'll be stuck without his cookbook this Christmas.
Nevin, my darling Nevin, a dear friend, and this perfect book available at Eason's and all good bookstores. And of course, we are only showing you a small selection of gifts. For more ideas, go on to newbridgesilverware.com. But this book is really anybody, even I can follow the fantastic recipes.
Gorgeous illustrations here, 24 quid, it's a steal.
A steal at €24, and everybody loves to get a cookbook that they can actually make sense of.
Eggs Benedict with spinach on it.
Oh, stop it.
On a Christmas morning.
It's mean Egg Benedict. Now, don't be putting more pressure on the hostess. Never mind the Egg Benedict on Christmas morning. A boiled egg will do fine.
Now, for the lad in your life,
or the girl,
or the lady in your life who loves, who loves to sip on the sidelines.
Yes. Look at this.
Isn't that gorgeous?
You can get it engraved, and look at you take it out. I mean, honestly, I no longer drink, as you know.
Yes.
But I would put lemonade in that just so that I could take it out of my hip pocket. They're called a hip flask for a reason.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing of taking it out and bringing it up and unscrewing it and having a little
I mean, if
slurp.
you're on the sidelines at a rugby match, we've got our producer, Sinead, she's at the basketball matches. I mean, it's gorgeous to have in your pocket, isn't it?
It is just very old-fashioned. This was the landed gentry who introduced the hip flask on the hunt, and now it's open to all of us. I just love that.
That's gorgeous.
And a lovely little leather pouch.
Before we let you go, quickly, etiquette, any traditions we should follow?
Respect your hostess, even if it's your mum. Drop her a little card in the post. She will keep it forever and say, thank you for making our Christmas. Don't be under pressure, mum. If you need, put all the wonderful turkey and gammon on the dining bar, in the kitchen, and let people
And
come
I'm going to
carve
pull
their
you up
own.
here now because a lot of men cook as well at home.
And then, absolutely.
What are you doing yourself for Christmas, by the way?
I will just have that wonderful opportunity, the only time of the year, as I say, to have family, friends, visits, good food, lots of walks, and more importantly, a beautiful table and lovely gifts and memories.
There you have it. You heard it there from Donegal's Father Christmas. Thank you so much, Noel.
A pleasure.
Loving the rig out here this morning. Back to you guys in the studio in Dublin.
And good morning.
Thanks,
Great.
Donegal's
Loving
Father
that, Noel.
Christmas. Love it, Noel.
Sure is, Noel. Fair play to you.
Cheers.
Great
Thank you so
little
much
gift
there.
guide. Speaking of Christmas, we were talking earlier on about Santa, how busy he is this time of year, and how his helpers are out there. Santa's all over the world and Ireland. Fiona then sent a message in. We were talking about your experience with going to see the Santas and how they cry and stuff. So my son James was not impressed with Santa at all. He was 18.
Oh my
There you
God.
go, yeah. And I'm sure that's been replicated so many times across the country with parents bringing their young children in to see Santa. Every year.
Now, we were talking about deliveries as well, where stuff gets delivered. Veronica says, we ordered a ton of stones for the drive. We received a message that they were delivered, but no delivery came to our house. We went looking, we found a bag of stones at a house down the road. We had to get a local farmer to get out his tractor and a bucket to bring the ton bag up to our house. They could have just dropped them on your drive and it would have been done.
I have a story like that. There was a few years ago, one of the rugby lads played a prank on someone else, to one of the guys who was a farmer. So to get him back, he went in the middle of the night, had a tractor trailer full of manure, drove up to the house at 3 o'clock in the morning. The guards stopped him in the car along the way to wonder why he's driving at this time of night, and literally drove up and dumped the whole trailer of manure at the end of his drive.
That's lovely, friends.
So are you all working out at home who it is?
Yeah.
Because we all know there's a certain
Don't
number of
mess.
farmers on the Irish rugby team. Anyway, coming up
Don't
tomorrow.
mess with the farmers.
Original Rock and Roll Kids, Eurovision legends Paul Harrington and Charlie McGettigan are going to be here.
We're going to sit down with the winner of this afternoon's Care of the Year Awards.
All that, plus your usual news, sport, and weather you're waking up to. Ireland AM is back from 7, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Worry about.